This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I know we have some people coming in a little late, and that's fine. We'll just keep on having people come in. It is August 18th, 2021, and we're really excited to have Jack Zika, who's been Premier Broker, as well as a state legislator with us, legislator with us in Oregon, and he's going to be telling us about what's been going on with new law. But I have a little introduction before we get to that. So let me go ahead and share my screen and go ahead and show you guys. Oh, not that one, this one. Okay, so this is really short. So I wanted to go over just a smidgen. We've been working heavily on our company website, and I wanted to share some stuff with you, and there's a reason behind this. So the power of SEO, we've been working very, very, very hard on this. I should say Brad's been doing the majority of this work, and it's quite exciting for us to see what's going on. So as you know, search engine optimization is how you are seen on the internet. And the work we've been doing over the last month or so has been giving us some great results. So if you Google a word, Bend home buyers, we're number 3 on the search engine, which is pretty exciting for us. If you Google Bend home sellers, we're number 4, which is pretty exciting for us. Bend luxury homes, we're number 3. This was as of a couple of days ago, and like I say, these things fluctuate based upon people putting things into their own websites and changes to terms and stuff like that, people working on their websites like we have been. But anyway, this is really awesome. If you do a Google map for Bend real estate, we're number 1. If you do a Google map for Bend, Oregon real estate, we're number 1. If you do Bend, Oregon real estate, which is really a hard one to be on the first page, we are number 8. If you do Bend real estate, we're number 5. If you look at our all-time page views, that's for our website, we have almost 5 million page views, and that is a lot for a independent brokerage in Central Oregon. We're pretty excited about that. How do people find us? What we're working on a lot of right now is the organic search. So this is, again, the whole thing was SEO. Display, this is dealing with an ad I run all the time. A direct, they're actually plugging in our name, but the organic search is the thing that we're looking at right now. Social media clicks to our website. We're doing a lot of work on Facebook. Facebook is resulting in quite a bit of activity, and I'm excited about that. Now, Active Rain is it's a real estate chat I subscribe to, and less with that. Obviously, Yelp, we don't do much with Yelp. We want to boost our presence in social media. I'm working on Instagram right now, but again, it's Facebook that's our number 1 thing. If you look at Bend real estate agents, that term, we're number 6 and number 7 on that page. And if you look at Bend real estate agents Google Maps, we're the number 3rd one down on this. Now, this is something I wanted to mention to you here. If you look at this number here for Bend Brokers Realty, 66, Team Bertola High Desert 271, we're 20. And this is one of the things I want to increase. This is actually dealing with reviews that we've received. And my goal with the reviews we receive, I'm looking at doing some, at closing, sending out requests to our clients, and this will be optional for you guys to provide me with this information. It would be emails, just to ask for, give us a review. Tell us what you think. And these review programs I'm investigating would automatically post to Google, Facebook, various other sources of places where people look for reviews. And the more reviews we have, which are positive, obviously, the better credibility we have as well. So this is something I'm looking at doing over the next, this month. I'm looking forward to doing that. And the other thing I think is real important is to look at domain authority backlinks. And this is the Jack Zika Wikipedia page. And bless Jack, because if you look right here, he has our name right here because this is part of who he has been. He's been working as a broker with Bend Premier Real Estate for some time. And this backlink that we have from the Jack Zika Wikipedia page as far as domain authority, he's ranked 98, and that is like almost perfect. So thank you, Jack, for that. If there's some way you can give us a backlink from the state legislature, that would even be better. But thank you for that, Jack. And with that in mind, I'm going to turn the program over to Jack so you can share with us what's been going on with the state legislature.
Thank you, Linnea. It's a weird thing to have a Wikipedia page. I didn't even put that together. That would just showed up in my first session. So it was kind of my wife, she Googled me and then told me, you have a Wikipedia page. And I was like, I what now? So anyway.
Well, thank you for that. It's given us added credibility.
That's great. Hey, that's awesome. So, well, thank you for having me here today. We had a different session this last time, which was all virtual. I'll get into that here in a second. A little bit about me is that, yes, I'm your state representative for Redmond, parts of Bend, and Sun River. So the parts of Bend are basically Mount Washington, the north side of Mount Washington, all the way over to Eagle Road and 27th, and kind of dances around on the east side. And then I have Deschutes River Woods and everything past the Baker Loop there. So I've also been on the Redmond Planning Commission. I just ended my presidency for COAR, now the past president. So that took a lot of time, or gave me back a lot of time, I should say. But the committees that they had me on or enrolled in the legislature this time were the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee is kind of where they don't have any time limits, and we have a lot of the controversial bills, or if it can't get through a typical committee in time, then it comes to rules. So we had some of the gun bills, the cap and trade bill, things like that come down to the end. I was on general government, and I was on ways and means, transportation, economic. I was on the housing committee, and then also I was the vice chair of the early learning child for childcare. So we did a lot of good things in housing, and we did a lot of good things in childcare this session. I'll get into those as well. But the number one question I got was, how was the virtual session? You know, how did we maneuver the legislature like that? And I can tell you there's good and bad from that. There was, of course, you didn't have the public input that we normally had with the session before. We didn't have constituents there. We didn't have our advocates there. We didn't have anybody. It was just the legislators and our legislators and staff. So not only was it lonely in the building a little bit, but we didn't really have the conversations that we normally have on the way to a committee meeting, or just everywhere in the building that we typically have. So that we kind of felt less informed, I guess you could say, in the legislature this year compared to the previous years. The good thing was, though, that this platform that we're on right now, we do Microsoft Teams, but I was able to talk to a lot more constituents this way. So, and it saved everybody from Central Oregon from having to drive 2.5 hours to Salem and getting 3 minutes to testify, and then maybe getting 15 or 30 minutes with your legislator to talk, or some of the other legislators to talk. So it spurred more engagement through constituency through this online platform, so which was great. And then you didn't have to drive that far. So those were probably the key takeaways I got from having a virtual session. Two of the important things that I think that the Bend Premier brokers should be attuned to from what we did was the education requirements. I had a bill that was the realtor bill to align our law and rule class. We'll add now a fair housing aspect of it. They wanted it to be like diversity, inclusion, equity, that type of class, and they were calling for a new class in its entirety. And we already had the law and rule class, which is a 3-hour class. And after talking to Commissioner Strode, we decided that it was better just to put it in there, because they look for content every year to try to fill that gap, or that huge time space of 3 hours. So including the Fair Housing Act in there seemed appropriate, and having the discussions with the speaker, we were able to make that happen. So that passed. But in my time at the legislature, I said, well, you know what? Realtors aren't the biggest problem. You know, we have a lot of classes. We have the Fair Housing Act. We need to add mortgage brokers and appraisers. So we added mortgage brokers and appraisers. So we're not alone in taking these classes. We also have the other aspects of housing included. So that was pretty good. We also, for the IDA accounts, so if you have the down payment assistance, that has been continued, but it's been changed. They weren't receiving as many donations because it was a tax deductible donation that you could make to deposit into this IDA account, then would be matched with your buyer that would put in money into an account, would be matched then by the state. But to get those funds, it was donated from other parties. We have decided that the state shall fund that program. So that program will be fully funded. And so we can all take advantage of it and have our clients that can use that take advantage of having the down payment assistance program. So that was good news. And then during the pandemic, we also changed the rules a little bit on that IDA program, that they could use it for living costs and use it for emergencies without having a penalty. So that was good. So we were able to do that inside the pandemic. Excuse me. So before I get into the housing stuff, I'm going to get into childcare a little bit, because I did focus on childcare quite a bit during the session. And during the pandemic, we had $70 million from the CARES Act to try to get out to childcare providers to make sure that they stayed open during the government closures. And we found out we lost about half of them, and which was pretty bad and pretty drastic. And we already were in the childcare desert when we only had 2 to 3 spots for every 10 kids that needed childcare. So Representative Power and myself, working for about 1.5 years, decided that these funds for the CARES Act weren't getting out in time. The department was the early learning division, and they were within the Department of Education. They just didn't have enough staff. They didn't have enough resources to make sure that these funds could go out to providers. And also, we have a lot of different programs. We have Head Start, we have employment-related daycare, we have Baby Promise, Preschool Promise, all of these programs for our kids, but they're all housed in different departments. So we decided to create a whole new department, and we created the Department of Early Learning and Care. So that was an interesting process, creating a whole department for the state of Oregon. And like I said, it was 1.5 years with advocates, with the school department, with OHA, with every DHS and all of those departments. And you can imagine they didn't want to relinquish some of their resources and their funds to create a new department. So we had to work and maneuver that whole area to get this where we're in a place where this will be implemented within the next 3 years with the Department of Early Learning Care. But in the process, we were able to expand the employment-related daycare system. So if you have a low-income family, typically if you get a raise, like if you were minimum wage and you were getting your childcare subsidies, were pretty much covering everything, maybe but $40. And if you got a raise of a couple dollars, then you lost most of those subsidy funds. So actually taking a raise in your job meant taking a hit because you were spending more on childcare. And we all know that childcare is hard to find, and when you do find it, it's about $1,200 a kid. So it's like a tuition payment. So we were able to expand that and keep the deductible low. And so we have the employment-related daycare, we have the Department of Early Learning and Care. Now it's going to house all of those child care programs into one department. And we'll have one-stop resources for parents and one-stop for providers, where they'll, instead of going from different departments, they can go strictly here with more resources and the ability to help more families. I thought it was a great win, and that was my biggest bill of the session, and I'm very proud of that bill and making sure that came down and helping out children and their parents, especially here in Central Oregon. When my time on the Planning Commission, I saw that they had different zoning rules for different businesses, which seemed appropriate. Some of them do, but for childcare, it did not seem appropriate, because we have this unconditional use permit, which is an additional $7,000, and you have those transportation permits, which could lead up to $20,000 to $40,000 in Bend, even though they cut those down a little bit, and Redmond cut down the unconditional use permit. But I decided to take that statewide and say that you cannot treat a childcare business any different than any typical business and a pass-through entity. So we won't have those additional costs to open a daycare that we once did. This will be statewide, so every local government will not be able to do that. So hopefully we've lowered the bar to start a daycare business within doing that. And then also housed in that bill, you can put a daycare in the EFU land, which was not possible before. it has to be co-located with a school or a church, something that already is in existence or zoned to be in existence with the pesticide setbacks. We also secured more money for our early hub centers, so tribal early learning hub centers. So Warm Springs will have more resources coming to help them with childcare, as well as us here in Central Oregon. So we have a lot of exciting things coming in the world of childcare, and hopefully it'll help us get back to work with all the closures and the economy's up and running again. And I've always been telling people that the daycare workers are the essential worker for the essential worker, because our police, our firefighters, our paramedics, they can't go to work. They can't find people to watch their kids. So that was what we did with childcare. Now the housing bills. I sit on the housing committee, and I can tell you it was very busy committee this go around, starting with before the session. Representative Fahey and I worked all summer long to create the Landlord Compensation Fund, and that was we secured $200 million to help landlords and tenants weather the storm of all the closures. And the initial special session, when we passed it, the landlords had to take a cut and only get 80% of their back rent paid for by these landlord compensation funds. So that was the thing I did not agree about. That was my hardest problem with that bill, but since I was a part of the bill and I helped get the $200 million, I ended up voting for that bill. But within the session, we had a fix-it bill that towards the end of the session, I believe it was Senate Bill 278, that said that if a tenant has applied for subsidies, then the landlord must wait 60 days before they can serve an eviction notice, to try to give the tenant and the community action agencies time to secure the money to pay the landlord. And within that, I was able to negotiate that they remove the 80% requirement and do 100%. Very proud of that bill. So the landlords will now be able to be compensated for 100% for their back rent. I apologize for the planes that go over by. I live a few miles away from the Redmond airport.
Jack, can I interject right here? I do have a question on that.
Sure.
To get that, does the tenant have to make the application first before the landlord can have this happen?
For the Landlord Compensation Fund, the landlord can actually start the application process and fill out the whole application. The only thing the tenant has to do is verify and sign.
So they have to, but for the landlord to get the back rent, the tenant still has to sign.
Yeah, but if they don't, then they can be evicted. Well, I said that they could. Now they can't, because the governor just extended the eviction moratorium till the end of the year. That happened a couple days ago.
Okay, and so, because I've heard these stories from around the country that sometimes there's variations of this law around the country, but the process has to start with the tenant making application. Mm-hmm. And if they don't bother to make application, then the landlord's still out of any options.
Yeah, we were running into that as well. And then we talked to different states. We talked to New Mexico, to Colorado, Washington, and there was one other state in there that we were trying to find what was the best program, and that had come up. And so we made it the ability that the landlord or it was supposed to be property manager, but there was some difficulties in rulemaking. So I think the property manager can start it, but still the landlord has to sign. The property manager cannot sign for the landlord. I think that's what it was. So the property manager can start the paperwork, but they still have to have both parties sign and agree to it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then, so anyway, yeah, with the governor extended the eviction moratorium. So that goes until December 31st. She just made that decision a couple days ago. So, but those funds are there. We had so we got secured $200 million from the state to go for the Landlord Compensation Fund and tenant vouchers. And then the federal government provided us with a $280 million that we have to use by the end of September. So that's a different program. But if you go on OHCS, the Oregon Housing and Community Services, they have links and ways to get to both of those programs. So they have enough money. They're having issues processing all the applications. And I've been on the phone with Director Salazar over at OHCS to try to make sure that they get everything that they need. It is a software issue. And during the session, I did talk on the floor that I was concerned about the software, and unfortunately that was true, and everything is backed up and bottlenecked. What they are going to do is take the Multnomah County cases. There's about 8,000 right there, and they're going to outsource them to a third party. So hopefully they will be able to process these applications and get the dollars out, because if we don't meet the deadline by the end of September, that money goes back to the federal government and we do not get to use it, which would be awful. Here locally, Neighbor Impact, I've talked to Scott Cooper. They have kind of gone away from the software. They're doing more paper processing, and Neighbor Impact is on the ball. They are getting the money out. They are doing their part, and we don't seem to have as big a problem here locally in Central Oregon because of Neighbor Impact. Now I got an alarm, as they do in Portland. So we're doing okay.
So Jack, would you recommend that if we have either connections with tenants or landlords who are having issues with the rent scenario, that they connect with Neighbor Impact? Would that be who you suggest we deal with?
Yeah, apologize for the horn going off here, but yeah, Neighbor Impact is who you're going to talk to. That is our local community action agency.
Okay.
And so, and if you're a part of the Landlord Association, they have all that information as well. You have Multifamily Northwest, you have all of the other landlord associations, and they have all that information too. And then the one of the bills that took 3 years to get through was the accessory dwelling unit bill, the ADU bill. We finally got it through. So if you're all aware that you can have an ADU within the city boundary, but when you get outside of the city boundary, like in Deschutes County, you could not have an accessory dwelling unit. You had to have a medical hardship, and you could bring in a manufactured home sort of temporary living. But then once the medical hardship was over, you had to remove that. Well, now we have secured, and it took a lot of work to do it, but we got the ADU bill through, and there are some stipulations, like it has to be 100 feet away. You might have to use the same water source. It can only be, I think it's 900 square feet or 1,000 square feet. So, and you have to have a green space. They had mitigation for fire risk, and so we had a lot of things that we had to get through to get that bill. Deschutes County was a big advocate in helping that bill, so they were actively involved, and they are trying to process and get this through as fast as possible. The bill does not go into effect until January 1st, but if you have clients that are ready or wanting to build ADUs, it will be possible in Deschutes County here soon. So I'm very proud of that bill, and I'm glad that we got it through. We had Senate Bill 8, which was Senate President's bill. And this was a very thorough bill, but the key takeaway of that bill was coming through with affordable housing. And we all know that we've seen affordable housing attempted by the city of Bend, and then it'll get blocked by a group that will sue and take it to the Board of Appeals at LUBA. And they go through a lot of court battles, a lot of court fees, a lot of time. A lot of money is wasted just holding the property, holding the note, trying to get it there, to get it affordable housing. And sometimes the owner of the property, or I'm sorry, the cities will just give up and they won't even build the affordable housing. Now, this bill, the Senate Bill 8, says that if the city wins the court case, then whoever brought this, the appeal forward, will have to pay the city's court costs and legal fees. So it's huge to stop the frivolous lawsuits, things that are just trying to block a lot of this affordable housing. That should stop, because the city has the right to build affordable housing. And with the bills that we've passed in the last couple of years, with House Bill 2001, you can have affordable housing in pretty much almost every zoning. So that.
Jack, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just had a question from Tina. She wanted to know, what was the zoning for the ADU? Is it on any rural property or anything like that, or
rural residential?
Rural residential. So EFU.
Yep, for now, yeah.
You can't.
Yeah,
so
EFU, no.
You can't do it on EFU.
Yeah, not EFU yet, no.
You still have the hardship option on EFU.
Yes, correct.
Got to be rural resident. Okay, thank you. Sorry for interrupting you on that.
No, it's quite all right. Let's see.
The affordable housing.
Affordable housing. Yeah, I got my list here. I'm trying to go through a lot of these bills. we secured, and if you know anything about Habitat for Humanity, they are very big in our area. They combined forces here in Redmond and Bend to start to help build houses for low-income families, where we all go in there and we help them build, and then the owner goes and helps them build. But they don't only do that, they also renovate houses. They renovate a lot of older homes in La Pine, make them more energy efficient, make them more sustainable. So we secured $10 million to help them out and make those upgrades to homes. So that was a nice bill. That was called Healthy Homes. And we got that through so that there's funds available to help low-income families upgrade their house and make them more energy efficient. So if you have some clients that need new windows or a new furnace, things like that, that are more energy efficient, that might be something that you can look into, is the Healthy Homes Act. And they also made us aware that with that House Bill 2001, where we had the middle housing bill that we did in the previous session in 2018, that you were able to build the houses and divide the lots, but you weren't able to sell them, which seems like a silly thing that we overlooked, but apparently we did. So we fixed it this time. You're now able to sell those houses. So I think that was pretty good bill for the session. We had a couple big bills with our homeless that have been growing here in Central Oregon. We had House Bills 2004 and 2006, which helps cities site homeless centers. And then also we secured $2.5 million for a navigation center here locally in Bend. So they'll be able to direct homeless to maybe different parts of the state, or if there's a shelter, they'll know who's available, who has open spots. And we were also able to secure $2 million to create a permanent shelter in Bend. And there's always that mad scramble towards the winter months here in October, November, of where's the warming shelter going to be. And hopefully that money will secure a spot and make it a permanent place for a warming shelter. So that was something that we were pretty proud of, that we were able to get through the session.
I am monitoring the chat, Jack, and I do have a question from Kathy. She asks, where can we get details for the ADU bill? Is that going to be at the county or?
Yes, Deschutes County. They, like I said, they were big advocates. They were testifying in our committee. So yeah, Deschutes County Planning Department will know all about that.
And so, yeah, and the name of the bill again for the ADU?
That was 391, Senate Bill 391.
Senate Bill 391.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
Absolutely. Like I said, that was a good bill.
It's a big one. It's a big one for us, as you know, with all the rural property we represent. So
yeah. Let's see, long-term. We have there's a long-term rental assistance fund that has been created. So when we talk about long-term rental assistance, this is for people under 20 the year. I think it's 21 years old that have been incarcerated, got a bad bad luck in life. They went to, might have went to a detention center or prison or juvenile hall for a little bit. And now when they try to apply for a rental application, they're having a hard time. So we did a fund now to help the state secure their deposit, and then if any damages occurred up to, I think, $5,000, the state will back that. So the landlord doesn't have to worry about that. So they'll be able to find a place to house. And one of the biggest things that we heard in committee is, like, if you've been incarcerated, you have a really difficult time trying to find housing because your criminal background comes up, and there's so many people that are looking for rental housing that if you have a criminal background, then you just get swept aside. So we tried to come up with a program that would back and help these folks find housing, and I think we did with that one. And then we also have another program too, where a family can use those funds. It's a separate bill, but they have that as well.
How would they access those, Jack? I mean, would that be through, again, Neighborhood Impact?
Yeah, they would know how to do it. You can call on a lot of these bills. You can actually call 211. 211 has all the information, but Neighbor Impact would have all of that information. And then as well, if you went onto the state website, OHCS, Oregon Housing Community Services, they would have all of the information on there as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then a big bill that we had that Representative Crumpf and I who's the Bend representative, we worked on throughout the whole session was that Stevens Road track. And we were able to get the Department of State Lands to part ways with that land over there. And it's a huge tract of land. I believe it's over 200 acres. And now the city will be able to sell that land. Of course, if you sell land that is owned by the state, it goes to the Common School Fund. So you have to get the highest and best price for that. So we had to put in that bill that the city was able to use 20 acres for affordable housing. And then we came up with a program within that to help out teachers, that we could look at maybe securing some affordable housing that was meant for teachers, because we're having a hard time recruiting locally for teachers, as well as police and firefighters, with the way that housing prices are going. That if you want to work in Bend, you're having a hard time finding a house and living in Bend. So hopefully that'll come to fruition, and we'll be able to have some housing dedicated for teachers over in that area. For sure, there will be 20 acres of affordable housing, and then the rest of it can be sold just for regular housing. So that's 180 acres left. I think it was 200 plus, so there's a little bit more there, but that will be developed probably in the next few years. It could be added to the Bend urban growth boundary. So that was a big win for housing during the session. The only problem is that when we come up with these bills, we have to do them sort of as a one-off, and it's a shame that we don't have a little bit more local control where the cities would be able to do this on their own with support of DLCD. But this was just not happening. The city had been trying to get that Stevens Road track for years. 2 different city councils worked on it, and then so we were able just to take it to the state and just knock it out through legislation. So we got it done. And so the city of Bend will have that extra 200 acres for their UGB and a lot of housing. We're also going to take a look at we've been talking about neighbor impact quite a bit, but we're going to take a look at the whole community action activists groups when it comes to rental vouchers, to make sure that we are distributing the money equitable and making sure that communities that typically do not get resources are seeing more resources. Now, neighborhood impact is not one of the bad groups on here. They have those established contacts with the Latin community, with the African American community, to make sure that those resources are going out, and they are pumping out monies to the BIPOC communities to make sure that their rental vouchers are getting out. And so, but the House Bill 2100, so 2100, we created a task force to really take a deep dive and look at our community action agencies and how we're distributing that money. So that'll come up, and I'm sure there'll be something next year out of that bill. I'm hoping that neighbor impact will stay safe the way they are, because they are doing a great job over there. We had a representative from Central Oregon telling Metro how to do things and how we're going to do housing. It doesn't really go over well with Metro, but when Metro, I remind them that they have high housing prices over there too, and then what they're doing isn't working, and we need to work on things. We seem to butt heads quite a bit. I don't know. Metro and I just don't get along very well. So, but did make a bill go through called 3155, which makes Metro do a study of affordable housing every 3 years and tell us how many what their land supply is available and how much of it will go to affordable housing. So I might have created a little bit more work for them, but we really need to make sure that we are getting our bigger cities. It's not only Metro, it'll go to Salem, Eugene, and Bend as well, but we really need to make sure that our cities are taking an inventory of the land that's available and how much of it will be affordable housing. And so when we do these UGB expansion requests, that they are correct and that we have the correct zoning and we have the correct amount of affordable housing. We're really lacking on enough housing being built. It's an astronomical amount of houses that need to be built in the next 30 years. I think it's over 600,000 more than our current level that we're building. So we have to be building houses, and just the way the system is built now and the way the land use laws are now, that's just not happening. So we wanted to really make bigger cities take that look in that study and make sure that we were going to come forward in the next few years building more houses. So I think 3155 is pretty good, but I wanted to give you a little bit of backstory there. It's interesting relationship between me and Metro. So going back to homeless, we had the tax exemptions for religious organizations and more affordable housing. We really see that a lot of people in campers around Bend, and we see them in Redmond as well, that the homeless situation is becoming worse. So we really wanted to partner up with some of our churches that have a lot of land in EFU areas and within the city and in the countrysides, in the rural area, that have these big tracts of land. And if they're willing to build affordable housing, this gives them a pathway to do that. And then also, if they want to build a homeless camp or just allow RVs parked in their parking lot, or their land, this gives them a pathway to do that. So all of our churches will be able to provide housing or shelter for our homeless folks, or affordable housing for people that are in need. So those were pretty good bills. It's 2008 and 3124. I'm going to go into what I brought back for Central Oregon, and then maybe we can do a little Q&A if everybody would like to ask some questions. So this session, however you feel about the money that came from the feds, whether you think it was too much, whether you think our grandkids are going to be paying for it, or whether you think it was we were in a pandemic and we desperately needed it. I kind of side on both sides here, but I think we needed the funds, but I also think it was quite a bit. But I am very excited to see the amount of investment that's going to be coming to our community. We have a lot of resources that are piling in. We're done at the state. We had the session over, so all the funds that the state had are now being issued. I'll tell you about some of the ones that I got back here for us. But also, if you know programs, if you know nonprofits that need assistance, if you know, like the Ronald McDonald House needed assistance, we were able to get them $100,000 from the county. So all this money now sits at the county and city level. So if you have those groups, or you are a part of those groups, now is the time to petition the county in your local city on some of these CARES Act money and ARPA funds. And now's the time to do that, to try to get that money. So what I brought back, so I had $2 million that I was able to allocate to the community. Every representative had the ability to allocate $2 million, and the senators had $4 million, I believe. And we did the homeless shelter for Bend. I did $1 million for Redmond to do sidewalk connectivity when I was on the neighborhood revitalization group here in Redmond. That was the biggest thing that Redmond was concerned about when it came to what the city should be doing. And a lot of our sidewalks are messed up or not connective, and we don't have them around schools. So I was able to get them $1 million for that. I got neighborhood impact, $800,000 for the expansion of the food bank. And then also $200,000 for our local Boys and Girls Club here in Redmond, which is called REACH. They are partnering up with the Redmond Learning Academy, and we got them $200,000 to make that transition possible. And they will be opening up here in September, and I'm very excited. I was just there and saw the facility. It's a great facility. OSU Cascades, we got them their money. The funds for the Student Success Center, that has been, we got that done. We got it secured. The students at the OSU Cascades actually voted to increase their tuition to help pay for it. And so the students that are attending OSU right now voted and passed an additional fee on their tuition for something that they will never get the chance to use, because it's going to take a few years to get this sited and built. But the Student Success Center will be built at OSU Cascades. So that was a huge win that we got. We also got 2 judges here in Deschutes County. It has been over 2 decades since we got another judge. And you know how much our population has spiked in the last 20 years. It's been a huge amount of people that have lived here, and the court cases are backed up. A lot of the judges are just struggling. In a lot of cases, they'll even drop like lower misdemeanors because they just can't, they don't have the time to see it. So this will make our judicial process run a lot smoother. The county is ready to try to build another courthouse or an expansion to the courthouse, but we got 2 judges. We were the only area in all of Oregon to get a judge in Oregon this year. So we were very proud of that. Brought back over $1 million for the Quince Townhome project. It's a Habitat for Humanity project here in Redmond. It'll be townhomes built, and we've got the funds for that. There's 2 years ago, I had a bill for the pilot project for Skyline Village, which will put about 500 affordable housing units in Redmond. I got $1 million for sewer interceptor to kick off the whole development on the east side of Redmond. So if you know anything about the map of Redmond, right above the airport, towards the housing where those Hayden homes are, there's a place called Skyline Village. And that area connects with the sewer line, which will then open up the whole east side for development. So the whole east side of Redmond will start being developed, and that is the start right there. So we got the funds to put that in, and then one of my priorities, and we were able to secure $3 million for a mental health triage here in Redmond as well. So Redmond got a lot of attention, Bend got a lot of attention, and we got a lot of funds and resources coming our way through the state, through now at the county and city level. I was very proud of all the things I was able to accomplish this session. It might not have been the perfect session, but it was able to get a lot done for Central Oregon, and was able to bring in a lot of resources. So I think all in all, it was a win for Central Oregon.
Well, thank you, Jack, very, very much. We have 15 minutes still, guys. So does anyone have some specific questions? And also, I've got someone here, because you guys are all going to get continuing education credits for this, but someone's called Caller 01, and I don't know who you are. So I will need to know that in order to get your credit units. But please, anyone have questions of Jack? If so, go ahead and unmute your mic, and I will let you know. Bob, you were the first.
The question that I have is, with all the new construction for all in, let's say, the next 5 to 10 years, has there been any discussion with regards to water?
Good question.
Absolutely. That is something that is a priority for many of us in the legislature, especially after the last couple of years in the fires, the reservoir levels. So we did secure, this is something else, and I thank you for mentioning this, Bob. I forgot that we secured $10 million. A lot of folks aren't happy, but we're going to be piping some of the main canals, and we got $10 million that are matching funds for the federal government. So a total of $20 million to pipe some of these irrigation channels and help conserve some of the water that would have evaporated or just gone back into the ground. So we will be conserving the water through piping, but then yes, we have the Deschutes Water Basin that is having studies done on it, and we just need to make sure and learn more about how much water is under the ground, how much water are we using, and then the flow levels for the reservoirs and the flow level for the Deschutes. The spotted frog keeps coming back up. We were Deschutes County is willing to build an area, I forget not a preserve, but something like that for the spotted frog, but the judge said that wasn't enough, so they're back to the drawing board on that. Really worried about the lower end of the water rights providers in Jefferson County. They're going to be getting shut off here, and 80% or 90% of our carrot seeds for the nation come from Jefferson County. It's an astronomical number, but we're worried about that. So yes, we are doing things for water. We need to be looking into it. I know I keep talking about Redmond, but we did get $1 million for a new well in Redmond. So the development out here at least will have the sufficient water for it. I know Bend is in the same spot, and they're looking at spots for new water as well.
Jack, I have 2 questions from the chat. Do you know which channels will be piped? Do you have any ideas? Which canals? Excuse me, which canals?
It's the Central Oregon one, the main one down the middle on 97. It goes through Redmond and all the way down 97, and it'll go all the way up to Jefferson. So that's the big one. Yeah.
And also, Diane was wondering if we can have a PDF of all affordable housing current and in the plans for Deschutes County. You have any idea? Do you have anything like that?
See, when I was on the planning commission for Redmond, we had something on the city website. So I would assume that if the county doesn't have something, the planning department doesn't have something on their website, that if you were to call them and ask them, they would be able to give you a printout of all of it. It has to be on the county website, and if not the county, then the city.
Great. And I'm sorry, I interrupted you, Bob. You had another follow-up question. So.
Yeah, I hope I articulate this correctly, but with all the fires and the pollution that we're creating right now with all these fires, do you see anything happening with the forest to where we can start logging some of this, selective logging, and creating logging roads, which create a fire perimeter as far as from fires to jumping? Do you see any of that happening? And still, keep in mind with, I guess it's the spotted owl and those sorts of things that are kind of holding things up. We've ruined industries because of this, but all I hear is just grow more lumber, but we're buying our lumber out of, excuse me, Canada.
Yeah.
And we've got a lot of lumber here that rather than burning it, we could log it correctly and have some fire breaks to where we can manage these fires, I would think, much better.
Yeah, I agree with you, Bob. We had that appeals because they were taking out the dead wood from the most recent fire, and over when you go over the Sandy M Pass with the Detroit and Mill City, unfortunately getting destroyed. But the court, because the environmentalist group appealed it and the court stopped it, so now you're not seeing any of those logs being removed. It's unfortunate. We need more better political environment. When I was talking to some of the firefighters and ODF, by the way, does a great job. ODF are firefighters here locally at the state, that when there's fire on state land, they put it out. And when it's on a federal land, they can't put it out. And so we have the Good Neighbor Authority, but it doesn't really do much. So it might take a week for the feds to get here. And then by that time, it's gone from 20 acres to 20,000. And so we need more work done at the federal level because they own 51% of the state and control that part of the forest. So we need to get our Congress more involved when it comes to this. And I tell you, I just drove to Florida, and the smoke from our fires goes to after Nebraska. It goes east of Nebraska. So that's how smoky it was. And we just went to Congressman Cliff Bence's town hall, and he said that every so often the smoke will hit Washington, D.C. And the problem with having a session here locally in February is that our forest fires end typically in the fall and the winter, and everybody forgets about it. So by the time February comes up and we have a legislative session, it's out of people's mind that whatever the new hot topic is comes up. So the firefighting piece of it, we need to make that more of a priority. And we have the means to clean our forest. If you look at the Deschutes Forest Collaborative, they're doing a great job around Sun River. If you go out and look at Sun River is the needles are clean, the shrubs cut, and a lot of that can go being used as biomass energy, those bricks that they make for people to burn in their wood burning stoves. And it is just amazing what they can do at that plant in Lapine, but they can't take from federal lands. They cannot clean federal lands because they get a tax incentive to take off state lands. But if the federal land, they lose everything. They lose all of their incentives. So something needs to be done at the federal level to make sure that we can clean those lateral fuels up in the forest in the federal parts of the land. But as the state goes, we're doing great. They can put out fires. They can use and do what they need. We did pass a bill that allocated a lot of funds that go towards forest fires. So we should see a lot of resources going to help the firefighters and get the equipment that they need. But again, It doesn't help the federal side.
Can we also, let's say if we started to do selective logging, let's say, on federal land, the money or the profits of that go toward more efficient management, I guess, to fund more equipment and be more on top of this and sell the lumber and create jobs by new mills and the bioproducts to put on your landscape or what have you. But I just think that money is driving this, and that's one way we could potentially make money.
Yeah, absolutely, Bob. I mean, the lumber prices are astronomical. I mean, they're coming down a little bit, but if we have the lumber and the timber right here, and we could put folks back to work. We closed a lot of mills down. There's only a handful of mills in Oregon that are still open. And the profits and the revenue that comes from the taxes off lumber go to the Common School Fund, go to the school fund. So that was a big hit for our education for those funds that have been removed over the last few decades. So.
Yeah, thanks on that. We have Kathy first and then Peter. So Kathy, would you ask Jack your question about the UGB? Yeah, Kathy.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Jack.
Hi, Kathy.
Thanks for all that you're doing. Great work. So it will be almost 5 years ago, this December, I believe, that the UGB growth boundary was approved for Central Oregon. And at that time, we were told that the infrastructure would be put in first, and then the building would be allowed. And this, I'm very discouraged by the lack of planning, especially the city of Bend, in that it's a free-for-all, and there are roads that are already overused, extremely busy, and yet additional buildings. It's just kind of a free-for-all. So I'm just wondering what went wrong? Is anything going to change, or is this just how it's going to be in the future?
Unfortunately, that was a lot of decisions that were made for a few years on the Bend City Council. Oh my gosh, sorry, I got a yellow jacket. So the Bend City Council has been cutting that budget for roads for I don't know, 10 years. And then they did the gas tax, and that passed, so that might help when it comes to roads. But yeah, I share your frustration. That's a local decision that the city of Bend has made the budget for infrastructure a lot less to push that money in other directions. So that is just something that has become a priority of the city councils in the last few years that have done that to our roads and our infrastructure. Unfortunately, the state doesn't have too much funds, and the leadership of the state is not interested in doing those infrastructure projects for the cities. So we do have a $3 trillion possible infrastructure bill coming from the feds, and I could see some of that money going towards helping out cities with roads. But when that money comes, they have discretion on how they spend it depending on what the U.S. Treasury gives them. So we'll have to take a closer look at how that money can be spent, and if it is on infrastructure, then we all need to let our voices be heard to the Bend City Council when it comes to that.
So can you tell me how it was that obviously Salem approves the UGB, and wouldn't the city have had to meet certain requirements? And then, so if that's the case, how did that change since then?
They of course, there's no timing requirements for a UGB expansion and how fast the city builds. That's just on how fast the builders can build, what is the need, what is the desire for more housing. So there's no time limit for them to build the housing. There was a time limit for them to do an urban area reserve, which is the bubble outside of the urban growth boundary, in which they lay out the zoning for what the future 20, 30 years looks like. But yeah, there is no pressure for them to develop these roads, and so it needs to come down from the citizens of Bend that this is what they need, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Peter, your question?
Yeah. Hi, Jack.
Hey, Peter.
Just kind of segue on both of these questions, Kathy and Bob's, about development. Is there planning for alternative transportation, bus lanes, bike lanes, and also neighborhood livability like parks and walkability? I live out in the Southeast, and I moved from Portland, and I used to be a big time bike commuter, but it's a little terrifying to ride your bike around here. So I just don't. I end up driving everywhere, which contributes to all of our environmental issues. And I just see it getting kind of worse and worse with these new developments that are just packing them in, and tight little roads they're congested with cars. Is there budgets that are coming through to expand roadways or whatever? That might be a city council thing, but that's my question.
Yeah, when it comes to the parks and the city roads, unless it's an arterial way, so like something like Highway 20 would be ODOT, and so that would be something that the state would have influence over. And that Cooley road where they were supposed to have that overpass. That was the state project that the city of Bend was supposed to get done. I don't know what's happening with that anymore, but they are supposed to, like, I can't speak for the city of Bend because I wasn't on that planning commission, but on the Redmond planning commission, we had it in a spot where if you built a house, it had to be within a quarter-mile proximity of a park. So if you have a development, then you have to put a little park in, and then you have within a certain amount of development houses that were developed, you had to have a larger size park. And that has been one of the biggest gripes I think the city of Bend has had, is that those larger parks are just not being built on the east side. And so that, I think they're trying to address that with, I think there's one coming up by Lava and Elementary that they're going to build a park over there. But that is more of a city council decision.
Okay. And the same thing with the roads, with the bus lanes, bike lanes.
Buses, bike lanes, that's all within the city. There, we have a collaborative, the Central Oregon, it's COIC, I believe. They're the Intergovernmental Council, and that has representatives from all the cities, and they kind of get involved when it comes to the mass transit. So if you needed more information, it would be from them. And Tammy Bainey heads up that, and she used to be a county commissioner for Deschutes County. She's doing a great job, but they're trying to expand that mass transit system.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Any other follow-up? Jack, do you have anything else you want to pass on to us?
Well, thank you for all of your support and letting me represent you in the state capitol. It's been an interesting time. We'll see. So the next thing to come up is redistricting. So we just had the census. And the numbers are coming back as we speak, and we should get our hands on those here soon. They have a special committee in the Senate and in the House. And I know people don't always like our Republican tactics by reading bills and drawing out the system, but we will, within doing that, we were able to negotiate with the Speaker of the House 50-50 representation in the House committee. So that was huge when it comes to fair and lines being drawn. So now there is a 50-50 committee in the House, and it has to be approved by both committees, the Senate and the House, before we have our special session, which is scheduled to be in the end of September. And when we see those lines, then we'll all vote. And if we can't agree to those lines, then it goes to the Secretary of State, Shemia Fagan. But so that is coming up, and so we will be having a road show, and I convinced them to do it in the Deschutes County Fairgrounds. So that'll be coming up in the next probably 2 weeks.
Great. Awesome. Okay, well, anything else from anybody? Okay, if not, I just still need to know who caller 01 is in order to get your CE's continuing education credits.
Linnea.
Yeah.
Linnea, it's Keely.
Oh, hi, Keely. Thank you, Keely. I just didn't know who caller 01 was, so thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Hi, Keely.
Okay.
Hi, Jack.
Good to hear you.
Thank you, Jack.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're done. And thank you guys so much. I have recorded this, and so I will post it on our YouTube channel. So if you want to reference back any of this stuff, there was a lot of bills here, lots of information. I wrote notes. So thank you again so much. Really appreciate it, Jack. Thanks for your time. Really.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody. Okay.
Bye.